Hello, dear wise, courageous soul. It is Christine here, connecting with you after what has felt like a very, 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 very long year. I can't believe that it was almost a year ago that I sent out my last wisdom video. I had just come out of the writing cave. For those of you that are been connected a while, you know that I have been working on a book called Overwhelmed and Over It for over 3 years. And I had just come out of the writing cave last March. And I sent out a video message that said, I'm coming out of the cave. And I was so excited because I had been in the cave for 3 years working on this book. And then we all went into the cave. Last March is when what I'm referring to as the great catalyst of 2020 really created a reality that none of us really could have predicted. And yet, like a lot of catalysts, it was a long time coming, centuries even coming, depending on who you ask. And while that doesn't make it any easier, the reality that many of us have faced, we've all been impacted emotionally, energetically, physically, mentally, in ways that we can't even understand right now. And some people have been severely impacted, and others of us have had impact that we've been able to navigate. But as a collective, we have gone through what is called a catalyst. And so what I wanted to do today, and I'll say a little bit about catalyst here in a moment, is just say hello. And if you've been listening and tuning in to my podcast, we've still been connected because I've been very committed to that podcast, Feminine Power Time, for now over 5 years. I've pulled back on the video messaging because something had to give. It's part of sustainable success. We can't do everything. So I chose the book and I chose the podcast, and occasionally I would drop in an email, but email and I are like, it's a little challenging of a communication for me because it overwhelms me. I don't know how you feel about it, but it's definitely overwhelming. So I'm taking a pause here right now in March to kind of look at how can we best stay connected, you and me. Because where we are right now in the world is we do not want to run back and contract. We do not want to just run forward, plant a new foundation, and try to make everything just be okay and then just make 10 things 10% better. There is another option. And that is the option of choosing to open up, of choosing to open up our minds, our hearts, our bodies, our beings and to connect with each other, to connect with ourselves, to actually go deeper. And from that going deeper place, we can actually go beyond what we've ever understood or known before. I mean, you and I could never have predicted the exact way everything rolled out last year. And we can't predict everything that's going to happen forward. But I can definitely rest assured if we just go back, we're going to have more of the same. If we only improve 10% or make a 10% shift, it's kind of like when you get a new job, but it's just the same old BS, but a different nameplate or a different title, or you stay in a relationship and you both don't want to leave because you're scared, and then you promise to be better and you all, increase 10% and then you go back to 5%, but it's still the same old relationship. This is why we've been doing a series right now in Feminine Power Time about redefining our relationship, first to ourselves, then to each other, and then to the planet. And then we're going to dive into what does sustainable success look like? And then this spring, there's lots coming, but we'll get to that later. Where I wanted to just start with this video, which really isn't a video. I mean, to me, this is you and I talking. I'm sitting here in my studio, looking at the Puget Sound. This is where I tape my podcast at, and my heart is wide open to connect with you. I'm choosing to connect. And so I'm going to start us with just a little perspective on how to think about the now. I just gave you an invitation to think about what is Christine saying here? Open up, connect with self, with each other through compassion and courage, and then we can move forward. So there's going to be a couple of videos I'm going to do actually over the course of the next couple months. I'm recommitting to the video world so that you can see me, and since we can't really travel so much right now, I want you to be able to see me, even though I can't see you. It is that. And then the podcast will continue to go on. But here's where I want to take our conversation today. So kind of lean in, this is going to definitely be worth it. Hold on a second. morning coffee in my savor the moment mug. So here's what I want to share and offer you. Before we go into what is possible and reimagining and redesigning this world, which we do need to do, which you and I have the power within us, no question about it, to create the new ways of working and living and succeeding, it's encoded in us. And this is not a race. We can't just jump into the next thing, just like we can't jump back to what was, and just like we don't want to be like pioneers who lived on the East Coast and set off for the West Coast and got scared and like set up camp in Nebraska. And no, if you're in Nebraska, no offense, but it's cold there. But they got scared, some of them got scared. Some of them like, I love it here, so that's okay. But that's where we're at right now. You don't want to let fear get you to just say yes to 5%, yes to just 10%. But here's the other piece. And I just wrote an article about this on International Women's Day. I'll put a link to it in my letter that goes out. It's on my website as well. And it's called Women. We are powerful, we are tired, and we've had enough. It's not really a blog, it's much more of a letter. And this is a little bit of a part of it, is like, look, last year, let's acknowledge it. It was taxing on all of us. And we're still in what's called the catalyst. A catalyst is like lightning. It's like whoosh, it strikes through and it illuminates, almost like with a blinding amount of light, what you have been blind to and what you can't see. And we've seen that personally in our own lives. We've seen it in our relationships. We've seen it globally on the planet. We're seeing it socially and systemically. Huge lightning bolt of light. You can't not look at what's been there for a long time. The catalyst also, it liberates us. It can, because it's like that fire that comes through and helps you release the roles and the responsibilities and the rhythms and the patterns and the routines for how we work, for how we operate as a society, for our relationships that aren't working. Like, in order for us, just like a butterfly needs to go through the cocoon as a caterpillar to go to the goo to get to the butterfly, that's what the catalyst does for us. It's not comfortable. It's usually painful. But how long we stay in the pain is really up to us. And that's the third part of what a catalyst can do for us. It can open up us to things that we can't even imagine yet. It's kind of like the storm. And it's that moment after the storm where we're at right now. And actually, the storm's not over. People are still reeling from and dealing with whatever is going on, but there's a level of some sanity and a little level of stability. And we want to keep that going this year. And we want to lean into that. We want to give it to ourselves, because here's the thing. We're not just tired from last year. We're tired from years and years and generations of overgiving, of overworking, of overstretching. It's okay. You can admit that you're tired. And take an exhale just from all the pressure, the pace that we have been driving ourselves and been driven to in a society built for burnout, in a society that is completely unsustainable. Now, here's the thing. Before we start talking about what's next, which we'll do next week, I'll come back with a video. I've got a structure, I've got a perspective. I think it's really going to help you frame this year. I want to stop and pause and acknowledge where we've been. And I decided that I wanted to read a passage from Overwhelmed and Over It for all of you, because it's already in here. I'm like, I don't need to rewrite it. I don't need to make it up. To just acknowledge where you've been. And then I'll say a little bit about where we're going and moving forward, and a couple things to think about in perspective of how you go forward, how you think about the year. And then next week I'll come back with the 6 principles, 6 points of feminine leadership. And this is for men or for women. It doesn't matter. Feminine leadership is within all of us, but it is a different way of leading. And it's a different way of creating and succeeding. And every single one of us can choose to be a leader Leadership is not a position. It's not a title. It's not little letters after your name. It literally is a choice to be a leader in your own life, to be a leader in the relationships around you, and to be a leader within whatever communities you're part of. And so we can't actually get into the new if we just keep trying to do it the way we've all been taught and educated and trained. So we'll talk about that next week. But right now, I want to give you permission, or invite you to take permission to just take a moment and take an exhale. And just acknowledge all the ways this past year that you haven't felt like you've had what you need, where you felt like you were stretched beyond, where the support that you needed wasn't there. That was real. And my invitation is going to be that we do have, while it wasn't there, we can create it to be there, but we can't get there until we acknowledge what was. So this is from my heart to yours. Before we can elevate to higher levels of awareness and operating, we always pause to acknowledge what has been. It's that calm after the storm, or even while the tremors are still happening and storms are still in the distance or even really close. This is the time for us to find the calm within the storm, to allow ourselves to pause after that heavy, heavy, heavy rain, and not just rush in, but to pause. Because you cannot spiritually bypass or logically think or self-help yourself out of the realities in which you are so not getting the support you need. In order for change to happen, two things have to occur. One, you acknowledge and feel the impact that all this pressure and responsibility has had and is having on you. And two, your experience is acknowledged by another person, a woman, a sister, a person who has also carried too much. Then you can finally set down the burden, be free of what has been, and step into new possibility. I would love to do this for you now. So slow it down and breathe. And hear these words, receive them. Let them get through to your heart. Wherever this finds you, dear one, I first want to acknowledge it has all been on you. A lot, too often, and it's too much, even for a strong woman, even for a strong being like you. For every moment you have found yourself alone, with no one but you to do what needed doing, I witness how frustrated, mad, sad, exhausted, and isolated you must have felt. I witness how unfair it has been for all of the ways in which you had to shoulder the responsibility. I witnessed that in the moments when the shit needed to get done and you looked around, you were the only one standing. There was no support to call on. No one but you could do the job. No one but you could do what needed to be done. Second, I acknowledge that at the time, you didn't have another choice you could see. You did not have the support structures in place you needed. You did not have what you needed to change the reality you were in. You were taught how to survive in an overculture that never had your best interest at heart. Third, I acknowledge that at this moment, you are standing at a different choice point. It's time now to ignite your fierce feminine wisdom within you and be truly empowered. And so as we stand here right now in this moment, which is interesting that we are taping this and we're having this conversation right before the spring equinox, whenever you're listening to this, so this will be relevant, but it's taped live. And we're talking about this right before the spring equinox, which is the end of March, which used to be the start of the year. And then Julius Caesar, around 1 BC, just changed it to January 1st. Video and topic for another time. But the springtime in the Northern Hemisphere and equinox, wherever we're at, because it's the beginning of this cycle, is about emerging differently, about going into, it's about a rebalancing and rebalancing imbalances. And so last year was a huge catalyst to like shake us up, and it does, like a catalyst spin, it will shake you to your core. It shakes those primal parts inside of us, the primal fears, the personal wounds. And then you don't just like, pave over that, like if it would be like having a street and then you have big potholes and then you just like don't fix the street, but you're just then always trying to deal with the potholes. We have big systemic potholes, big societal potholes, big potholes, holes within ourselves, holes within our relationships. Now is the time to look at it and say, okay, let's not just build a new road, but let's do this differently. But first we need to make sure, love, that you have the support that you actually need. And we have so much more. Like, I'm not going anywhere. This is my work in the world. In 2021 and beyond, we're gonna make it through this threshold together. But I have 2 questions to end us on. And then I could sit here for the next weekend with you, for the next month, and just keep talking. But that's not going to serve you. It's not going to serve me. Although I would really like to have a retreat and be able to see you and see people again. But we're going to do what we can. We're going to be doing stuff virtually. We're going to be doing stuff online. We'll get there together. But here's what I want to start. And I want to look at this, the letter that I wrote on International Women's Day. At the end of it, there are these 2 questions. And so these are ones I leave you with today. 1, ask yourself, what support do I need? What support, and I'm asking you, do you need to stay sustained and centered this year? And think about that support, emotional support, mental support, physical support, material level support, spiritual support. And then 2, what is one action or one person you can reach out to spark the spiral of support that you need? Love that. Spark the spiral of support. This is where our power is to choose to use the catalyst, not let it decimate us, not let us go back and run into fear, but to use that energy of both the fire and the earth. This is the year of the ox. This is not a time to be pacing or racing off. It is the year of the ox. It's also not our job to push the ox. It is our job to guide the ox, to plow the field, to create new fields. It's okay to pace yourself this year and to really take a look around. And this is the part before we even go forward is like, where are you? What's in alignment? What's not working for you? What are the shifts that you want to make? And to give yourself the space to be in relationship with yourself, with others, with the planet, with the universe, to actually create that. That's where we are. I have dreams, I have desires, I have things I want to be true, but I'm focused in the middle of 2022. And giving myself that space, that arc, that rainbow to say, okay, that gives me a good 16 months, 14 months, whatever it is. I can exhale. So it's not about a race. It's not about pushing, but it is about showing up and being present and about willing to go deeper into ourselves and with each other. That's the daring part. So I look forward to being on this journey with you. If you haven't listened to the podcast series on redefining our relationships, do. I will be back next week with you all to talk about a structure and a model to think about this next year. And just know that what I'm very excited about is we are going to be working this book, working what's in this, starting in April. We'll be opening up an Overwhelm and Over It 16-week experience that starts on April 11th on equinox. And there's more to come. So I am here. We are here. We are connected into a bigger web of people who believe it is possible. And that's all it takes, is for us to believe it's possible, but we need to be stable and centered here first. So I send you off with much love. Read the missive I wrote. There's a blessing in there for you as well, which is something that we need when we go through change. Deep exhale. You are not alone. You didn't mess this up. It's not your fault. And you do have the power within you to make shift happen. I look forward to the journey. Much love.